Hello, I'm Nima Rajan, and welcome to Northwest Newsweek. Days after introducing the final budget of his mandate, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau touched down in Thunder Bay on Friday for a series of meet and greets and photo ops, which culminated in the town hall that evening. Trudeau faced reporters early Friday afternoon at the local Leona office on Balmoral Street after visiting with recent Leona training graduates and promoting his government's skills and training initiatives as outlined in this week's federal budget. Those commitments include a $250 yearly tax credit to help cover the cost of skills upgrading and 4 weeks of EI benefits, allowing employees to take time off work to make those upgrades. Trudeau predictably faced questions from national reporters about the ongoing SNC Lavalin scandal and Canada's deteriorating relationship with China. He also fielded questions from local media regarding the federal government's role in supporting cities like Thunder Bay that must provide health and social services not only to its own citizens, but residents of dozens of remote northern communities. But the Prime Minister's answers were short on specifics.
It's our responsibility to work on reconciliation, not on our own, but with partners. We know that municipalities and provinces and communities right across the country need to be partners in the path to reconciliation, and that's why we continue to work with municipalities like Thunder Bay to ensure that we are supporting the opportunities and the path towards reconciliation that's so important.
The PM was also asked if he'd commit to visiting the communities of Grassy Narrows, which continues to deal with mercury in the English Wabigoon River, and Cat Lake, which recently received federal money to build new housing units after dangerous amounts of mold have accumulated in many homes. Trudeau indicated that the Liberals would continue to support First Nations across the country, but made no commitment to visit those specific communities. A Thunder Bay City Councillor has confirmed that she'll seek the federal Liberal nomination in Thunder Bay Rainy River after incumbent Don Rusnak abruptly withdrew his candidacy in the upcoming election. Shelby Chung says she'll officially file her nomination papers upon her return from a business trip to the U.S. Rusnak was elected to represent the riding in 2015, and after being acclaimed as the Liberal candidate once again back in November, he announced on Sunday that he's stepping away from politics to spend more time with his young family. Chung, who won a second term as Thunder Bay's Northwood Ward councillor by a landslide in October's municipal election, says her plan was to help Rusnak get re-elected in the upcoming federal race. But after being contacted by the party to gauge her interest, she believes the unexpected opportunity to run for a seat in Parliament is too good to pass up. Chung notes she'll continue her duties as city councillor for now, but will likely take a leave of absence when the federal campaign officially begins. Meanwhile, Mayor Bill Morrow says the party has also reached out to him regarding the Liberal candidacy, but the former provincial cabinet minister hasn't yet made up his mind. Another former councillor, Linda Ridholm, will represent the Conservatives in this fall's election. Neither the NDP nor the Green Party have named a candidate thus far. The federal election will be held on October 21st. The city of Dryden will have to make a decision in 2 months' time to either keep its municipal police force or switch to the OPP. Now, that's a debate that's been long discussed in the city. And Thursday, Dryden residents got a chance to speak in an open forum and get answers about the gains and losses that could come as a result. Alana Pickrell reports.
They've heard from the city, the Dryden Police Service, the accountants, and the OPP. Now, residents of Dryden have had their chance to ask questions and voice their concerns regarding the possibility of disbanding the DPS in favor of the OPP. Many of the concerns raised focus squarely on one thing: the cost.
We're going from, 12 million to 15 million in 3 years. That's a $3 million increase to us.
Do we have this money to make this transition, and is it viable?
I don't know how anybody who ran for council on a platform of fiscal responsibility could consider going to the bank and borrowing $3 million or more and put us further in debt where we're just heading in the right direction.
And while the members of councils who were in the audience couldn't answer questions directly, Mayor Greg Wilson says he is happy to see the level of engagement.
We had good questions, we had good commentary, and tonight I was really pleased to see a lot of citizens come out and as I just said earlier, either vent or ask questions or just wanted to make some comments.
Inspector Ann Tatchik represents DPS's senior officers and agrees with the residents regarding the costs. She wonders why the city is even gambling with the subject.
The Dryden Police Service is not in financial trouble. One of my questions would be, if we are not in financial trouble, you know what our budget is, you can pretty well predict our budget over the next 5 years with reasonable certainty, then why are we even doing this?
Dryden Police Association President Scott Silver was also in the audience and says it was uplifting to him and the other officers to hear the swell of support from residents.
I'm very overwhelmed, actually, by the response from the citizens on how much they want to keep us and how much they like having their own police service.
Some of those who spoke also asked if council members would live up to a pledge made during the election to allow the public to decide. Wilson says there's always options, but with 8 weeks left before a decision must be made, a referendum may be out of the question. Alana Pickrell, TBT News.
Well, some bad news for Fort Frances. A bid by Rainy River Packaging, commonly known as REPAP, to purchase the long-idled Resolute Mill has been rejected. The bid was submitted last Thursday, just before the March 15th deadline. It was described as a multi-million-dollar deal, which also included other benefits for both companies. But early Monday morning, in a letter from Resolute, President Yves Laflamme addressed to Fort Frances Mayor June Cole, the company says REPAP did not meet the level of certainty required to move forward. Fort Frances Councillor Douglas Judson says he had no confidence in the process administered by Resolute and believes the company's plan to sell the property to a redeveloper, which is outlined in Monday's letter, was their plan all along.
This facility has been closed now for 5, going on 6 years, and only now has there been a move to transition it to an entity that would demolish it on the eve of a new forest management regime coming into place for the Crossroute Forest, which would confer greater control to the communities that are supposed to be deriving the economic development from that wood. It seems mighty suspicious to me that that timing has unfolded exactly how it has.
Judson also says Resolute put a number of roadblocks in place to prevent certain types of business entities from participating in the process. The letter concludes with Resolute saying that they expect an unnamed community development company will make a public announcement regarding the mill's future in the coming weeks. Kenora Rainy River MPP Greg Rickford is also offering his thoughts on the latest developments regarding the Resolute Mill. In a social media post, he states that he is profoundly disappointed to see Resolute reject the offer, adding his commitment has not changed and he is not ready to give up the fight. Fort Frances residents are also expressing their frustrations regarding Resolute's rejection of Rainy River Packaging's offer. We took to the streets with a camera and a microphone to hear what residents had to say.
Well, my family and I were very disappointed. My husband's been a logger his whole life and our whole married life, and we were really hoping that it would have a go and start up again so that it could bring some more jobs to the town. And
I think that Resolute really hasn't been too fair to the local area, from the wood to the community, and they keep on saying that they supported the community, but it isn't a surprise to me that they're doing what they're doing, and I think that they never had an intention to actually stay here.
I think it's pretty sad for our town. I mean, we need it create jobs, and when you cross the border, the first thing you look at is the mill.
Yeah.
And it's falling apart. Like, you know, if someone would run it and take it over, it would, you know, be beneficial for our town.
Yeah, I agree with you. And bring jobs to younger people and
keep families here.
Keep families here.
I believe they should have approved it because, you know, there's a lot of people around here looking for jobs. There's a lot of people that got rejected from New Gold that had prior mill experience, and, you know, like, I believe that it would be more proactive if it would be a step in the right direction if, like, they reopen the mill.
I think it's criminal for the company to come along, Resolute to come along and say to the community that, you know, we're not interested in entering an agreement with this company to purchase the mill, but yet they're okay with selling it to a teardown crew.
The Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry says his hands were tied when the town of Fort Frances sought his help to get their shuttered pulp and paper mill sold to a company that would reopen it. John Yakubuski made those comments at a stop in Thunder Bay on Friday. Corey Nordstrom reports.
The Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry was the special guest at a luncheon put on by the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce. He's been making the rounds across the province as his office looks to craft a new forestry strategy, but the topic of Fort Francis's mill was still front and center on many minds. The town's only hope to reopen the mill fell short last week as Rainy River Packaging's offer was rejected by Resolute Forest Products. Many in Fort Francis believe a problem in those negotiations would have been much different if the minister's office had stepped in and demanded the crossroute forest can only be used to supply the local mill and not Resolute's plants in Atikokan, Ignis, and Thunder Bay. But Minister John Yakabuski says he doesn't have the authority to restructure the wood fiber rights until new ownership is in place.
We wouldn't do anything until such time as we have a purchase of the mill being completed. At that time, we would readdress the situation. But it would never be part of something. We cannot inject ourselves into the negotiations in order to affect the sale of that asset.
Yakabuski says those other Resolute mills are important to northwestern Ontario and that his office's focus remains in making sure the province has enough wood supply for the current mills rather than one that has sat dormant since 2014.
As we develop this forestry strategy, we're going to have to make sure that we have an adequate wood supply to supply existing mills, let alone new or reopening mills. And that's something that we're definitely focused upon.
Resolute Forest Products has previously said they plan on selling the mill's property to a company which will demolish it for redevelopment. Leaders in the town of Fort Francis are still looking at ways of getting Resolute to re-examine their decision. Corey Nordstrom, TVT News.
The Ontario Fire Marshal's Office is investigating a fatal fire in Keноra's downtown core. The blaze broke out in a historic building in the city's downtown core just before noon on Sunday. A search of the structure turned up the body of a male. His identity has not yet been released. The building, which was once the Dalmore Hotel, contained several housing units, but no other injuries have been reported. The cause has still not been determined. That structure has been the source of many police and fire calls over the past several months, and a court order had been issued in January advising tenants that they had to vacate the building by the end of April. There are no fatalities to report, but one man is homeless after a fire ripped through his trailer on Thursday morning near Dryden. The Oxdrift fire team received a call to Kamitsa Trailer Park shortly after 11 o'clock and found smoke and flames inside the building due to a lack of hydrants. And a call was made to the Dryden Fire Service for a tanker to supply water. Crews managed to get the blaze under control quickly before tackling and extinguishing several hotspots inside. Oxdrift Fire Chief Donna Cockle says the trailer will not be livable and any personal items inside that didn't burn will have smoke and water damage. She adds, fortunately, the trailers are not located close to each other, which helped keep the fire localized to the one building, which is just one of many challenges when dealing with a trailer fire.
The basic challenge, of course, with trailers is always, they don't really have an attic, and the little attic they do have is not as accessible as we'd like. The fire was definitely moved up and into the roof area, and that always presents just the challenge of being able to get in and get that fire out before it takes down the trailers on either side.
The cause of the fire hasn't been determined, but it remains under investigation. When we return, Red Rock Council is now compliant with the province after hiring its integrity commissioners. That and more after the break. Red Rock now has in place a way to deal with complaints made against its members in the form of an integrity commissioner. The deadline for municipalities to hire an integrity commissioner was on March 1st. However, Red Rock has opted to hire two, but that was only one of several topics discussed at Monday's meeting. Adam Riley reports.
With two integrity commissioners in the wings, Mayor Gary Nelson says Red Rock Council will be better prepared to deal with internal and external complaints in the future. During the previous council, several conflicts arose that included an investigation by the provincial ombudsperson, which Nelson says could have been avoided. But should one or both of the integrity commissioners be required to investigate a complaint, it could cost the town. And Nelson says they would require some financial assistance.
The province would have to step in and assist in, if any, financial-wise, because, like you know yourself, a small town like Red Rock, if we do get into some big trouble, it's going to cost us a lot of money. We don't have the money.
Council was also presented with information from Nelson regarding a possible housing investment in the community. Nelson says he and CAO Albert Hedrick toured a townhouse development in Sault Ste. Marie, which could be duplicated on a smaller scale in Red Rock. Housing is needed in the community, especially with major projects like the East-West Tie and the construction of a liquefied natural gas plant just around the corner. But to entice a developer to invest, Nelson says the town needs to consider offering up empty property for free.
And we just asked this fella, if we give you this land, you service the land, put a building on it, and I'm sure they'll be sold or rented.
Once the townhouses are built, Nelson says the town will be able to collect increased tax revenue from the properties. He adds that a Thunder Bay area developer has also expressed interest in the property. Town infrastructure was also discussed at the meeting, specifically pertaining to the Highway 628 bridge. Nelson says both the town and consultants agree the bridge will need to be replaced eventually. Each year an assessment on the structure is made and the town spends money where it can to provide upkeep, but a total replacement would be next to impossible. However, Nelson says Hedrick might have found a way to do so from a ministry not normally tied to bridge infrastructure work, the Ministry of National Defense.
The bridge was there in 1937, and it shows workers working on it, whether they were mill workers or somebody from the prisoner of war camp, because there is a guardhouse situated right at the bridge at that time. That was 1937. They didn't start clearing the land to build a town until 1940, so the town didn't build the bridge.
Nelson says as the town gathers more evidence, he hopes either the provincial or federal government will take ownership of the structure. Adam Riley, TBT News.
A Canadian Senate inquiry committee has ruled that Lynn Bayak breached the Senate Code of Ethics. The controversial senator from Dryden has been under fire for posting racist letters against Indigenous people on her official Senate website. In a 57-page report released Tuesday, a Senate ethics officer ruled that Bayak breached 2 sections of the code when she posted 5 letters on her website that contained racist content. One of those letters called into question whether residential schools were harmful. The ethics officer proposed that Bayak should delete the letters, post a formal apology, and complete a cultural sensitivity course with an emphasis on Indigenous issues. But she refused to agree to any of those conditions. The inquiry was the result of 4 separate complaints. Bayak denied that the letters were racist and claimed that she was only posting the positive side of the residential school story. She was appointed to the Senate in 2013 and was kicked out of the Conservative caucus last year after refusing to remove the letters from her website. A 47-year-old Dryden man is facing drug trafficking and possession charges following the execution of a search warrant at a city residence. Police seized various amounts of crystal meth, cocaine, oxycodone pills, and a large sum of Canadian currency with an estimated street value of $128,000. The drugs were intended to be sold in the Dryden, Lac Seul First Nation, and Sioux Lookout areas. Kiiwetinoong MPP Sol Mamakwa is asking questions about the impending closure of the Child Advocate's Office. The duties of that agency are being rolled into the Ontario Ombudsman's Office by the Ford government, and the Thunder Bay office is due to close by May 1st.
These frontline workers answer the calls of young people and kids in crisis. If they listen first, they take direction from the child or the youth as to how they can support them to be heard. Mr. Speaker, this office has been in place for 40 years. Why is the government closing the Ontario Child Advocate's Office, which employs 20 frontline workers for our most vulnerable children and youth?
And we have also made arrangements to ensure that we embed a child advocate within my ministry so that we ensure that children in custody and care have the access that they need for the advocacy role. But let me be perfectly clear, we believe the oversight capabilities of the Ombudsman are far superior than what we've got now, and we believe that the Ombudsman will continue to work forward in a very constructive way, and that's why we're working with Paul Duvet and my ministry, and we're going to continue to work.
Coming up next, we meet some furry friends looking for a new home. An Ignace-based organization called Northern Critters in Need brought fun and furry companions of all shapes and sizes to the Finlandia Club last week to meet local animal lovers who are looking to adopt a new friend. The organization cares for surrendered or stray animals from Sioux Lookout to Sault Ste. Marie. The organization encourages interested pet owners to lean toward adoption over other options to help each sheltered animal find a new home.
People seem to think that because these animals come from the background that they come from, that they're broken in some way, and they're really not. I mean, I have 2 rescues. Most of the fosters here have rescues that they've adopted. They're fantastic.
These ones all come from, some of them from a pretty rough start, or some of them are born in care, and I think that rescues like this, Northern Critters in Need and others in Thunder Bay, just really give these animals a second chance to find a good home here in town or in a neighboring community. And I mean, when you look at their little faces, how can you not try to help them out and find them a good home?
Each adopted pet is up to date with its vaccinations and is microchipped. Anyone interested in adopting an animal can apply on Northern Critters in Need's Facebook page. The OPP's week-long distracted driving campaign led to 20 charges across the Northwest region last week. OPP officers spent March 11th to 17th patrolling area highways, looking for drivers who were using their cell phones, looking down at devices on their laps, or even just holding them. Last year, 55 people lost their lives due to distracted driving collisions on OPP-controlled roads. There were more than 9,000 total collisions, and over 13,000 charges were laid. Sergeant Mike Golding says there were 2 main distracted offenses that they saw a lot of last week.
Drivers stop at stop signs or stop lights. They still feel that because they're stopped and they're not moving, that it's safe to look at their phone. And we want to get the message out there to them to understand that it is still an offense. Like, you're you're in a motor vehicle, you're on a highway, you're in control of that motor vehicle. The fact that you're looking down at your device, you're now not paying attention to what's going on around you. You know, if a vehicle is to lose control and come towards you, that instantaneous second where you're looking down may end your life. Second, I would say, would be utilizing a handheld device for a different reason, whether it be playing music for an MP3 or maybe as a GPS.
Golding adds that even passengers in vehicles need to step up and tell drivers to get off their phones. And that's all for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Stay tuned for next week for a new episode. I'm Nima Rajan. Take care.